but describe Joe on DMT versus Eddie when Eddie took us.
Well, Joe just kind of sat back in the couch and relaxed and went into his little world for 6 or 7 minutes and came out very peacefully. But Eddie went full blown fight mode, like he was on the MMA mat or the UFC mat, yeah, like that, getting ready or in the middle of a full-blown fight. That's very important that people grasp what the left and the left-hand path is, that it's Satanism. Again, people need to read their Bible. Check out the logosmedia.com website. Check out my YouTube channel while it's still there. I recommend people download everything because who knows, they may shut down my channel after today.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. We're about an hour and 20 minutes into this global broadcast. Mike Adams is going to be hosting the 4th hour. I want to be very, very clear about this. I am not coming out against DMT and coming out against Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan didn't have me back on his podcast. Joe had never had me on his podcast, even though he'd been doing it for like 10 years before he had me on 2 years ago. And then I simply asked Joe, because everybody kept asking for me to be on. It was the most popular podcast he ever did, why he wasn't having me on. And I just simply said a few months ago, please stop reading the talking points that George Soros was a victim of the Nazis and that I'm lying about him being a Nazi collaborator when he said it on 60 Minutes. And please stop saying I've sent people to Sandy Hook families' houses and that I'm currently doing it, and basically defending my deplatforming. I said, because I know you're going off talking points, which Howard Stern's followed as well, the king of free speech, who, by the way, is airing impersonators of me saying, this is Alex Jones, you need to go harass the Sandy Hook families. So they can then say I'm doing that, when I never said that. And so then I remembered the last few years, things I learned here in Austin, things that happened years ago, like 10 years ago in Austin, 8 years ago in Austin, 5 years ago in Austin, that whenever Joe would come to town a couple times a year, he'd give me a call, or he usually gave me a call, or sometimes I'd learn about it and call him, and we'd go out to eat a couple times, or I'd go see his shows and stuff like that. I mean, Joe's a funny, smart guy. And I got to know people he ran around with, comedians and business people and gurus and things like that. And it was the stuff I learned in the last few years here in Austin from people close to Joe and businesses he's involved in that I know you can't do unless you're mobbed up with the FBI and the CIA. I mean, only Timothy Leary could go around with suitcases of hallucinogens and hand them out and get on airplanes with them, directly from the CIA, and he later admitted that. So I started getting intel on this from law enforcement, from, without me asking, like coming to the office and giving me briefings about, hey, what do you know about this? This is what we know about this group. And then I started feeling like, well, am I being nice not calling Joe about this because maybe he'll have me back on, or he's my friend? Because I've never sold out. I've never sided with the dark side. I've never known something was going on and then not done anything. But when you already are friends with somebody and you're a very loyal person, it's my weakness and my strength. I'm like a dog, very loyal. You kind of slowly blind yourself to things that you've seen until they're right there in front of you. Okay? So let's just say this. Modern MK Ultra is going on all around the world. And it's not just gurus promoting it on television or on popular podcasts all over. It's being promoted at the local grassroots level with self-help groups being set up that are 100% beyond anything you think of the Scientologists, because the Scientologists aren't put people on ayahuasca and DMT. Okay, and they don't have medical doctors on staff. So I'm here to tell you, just in the last year, I then learned more about UT's involvement, testing new super high-end, super strong hallucinogens that they're testing on Austinites. This is classified information, by the way. And then I remember someone connected to Joe like 18, 19 years ago. Hell, it was before 9/11, 20 years ago, inviting me to the UT research facility when they thought I was a joke and telling me all this wild stuff. And I'm like, well, this is like MK Ultra. And they go, no, this is way past that. And so it's not just Joe. It's a whole culture taking over. Joe's just part of it, but he's a kingpin in it. And so it needs to be exposed. So I appreciate our guest holding, Jan Irvin. And of course, he's tlogosmedia.com, Jan Irvin. I'm fully aware of his work. At a time, he had one of the biggest podcasts on the internet. He introduced Joe to podcasting. He was the first person to take DMT with Joe. And I think the best way to quantify this, and I'll go to him and shut up, is that he doesn't want to attack Joe either. He just wants to be truthful and get off the planet with his soul. And he's worried about it. He's got kids like I do, and Joe's just a big window into this world. And his progression of selling out the system and even supporting anti-free speech stuff and putting out the talking points is Jan got into this and was being used by people he now knows are connected to the system big time. He was popular, and as soon as he figured out it was bad, that's when everybody pulled back, and it went from Jan, I see him nodding his head, being the man, the new Timothy Leary, because he didn't want to be it. It became Joe. And so it isn't like, oh, I'm jealous. I'm not the big guy pushing DMT. He's the guy that brought this to everybody, but he had people behind him, and he understood it. And again, when you understand what this really is, opening up another portal, another dimension, it's very, very dangerous. So we got 3 minutes to break. Thanks for coming on. I see you nodding your head. Give us your opening statement on what you want people to know, and then we'll come back and get into great detail on all this.
Well, I was an ethnobotanist for years. I was considered one of the leading researchers in psychedelics back in the 2000s. In 2007, 2008, I was working on a book called The Holy Mushroom. I discovered that the guy I was investigating, he was the so-called discoverer of magic mushrooms. I discovered that he was working with the CIA, MK Ultra Subproject 58, a guy by the name of Gordon Wasson. In 2003, 2004, I had met Joe Rogan, and we had become friends for about 8 years, up until the day I was on his show in the summer of 2011. And basically, he interrupted my whole interview on his show, his episode 119 on the JRE podcast, to interrupt for, genital jokes and stuff like this, and basically slander me during the interview. I had about 1,000 emails from his audience apologizing to me over the next year for his behavior. In 2012, I published an article, Gordon Wasson, the Man, the Legend, the Myth, exposing the fraud behind magic mushrooms. And really, it began a whole investigation behind the CIA's true MK Ultra program as the psychedelic counterculture. And when I did that, I went from being one of the top guys out there in podcasting and everything, and they immediately shoved my show down, tried to push me out. Joe Rogan and others were out there, like Simon Powell, Iona Miller, others putting out hit pieces against me, spinning all of my research and everything, and totally lying about what I said. They got Dennis McKenna in on it. Dennis McKenna did a hit piece on me at Free Your Mind conference several years ago. But Dennis McKenna is, of course, Terrence McKenna's brother. And I ended up exposing all of these guys as working for this agenda. I didn't get the memo that I wasn't supposed to publish the truth on this stuff. I thought, as a researcher, we were supposed to publish what we found. And I got into the citations, into the primary citations, and started checking all of the people's research that I was working with and checking their facts and everything. And most of these people, their research did not pan out. And I started exposing all of this. And so they came out attacking me, and have done so now for, well, since 2011, 2012.
Jan Irvin is our exclusive guest here. The guy that first gave DMT to Joe Rogan, and the lovable and good guy, Eddie Bravo. Can tell you exclusively, first time ever, gonna hear it here. You need to understand something. The original system that set up the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Babylonians, the Egyptians was hallucinogens. And there's no new drug under the sun that isn't a permutation or a synthetic of compounds already existing. So when you hear that DMT was discovered 70 years ago or whatever, you hear LSD was discovered by a guy in Switzerland. The most ancient thing is for cults, the witch doctors, who know how to make medicine and other things and who keep track of the stars so they know when the eclipse is coming. They have the memory. They have the written word. They have the Sanskrit. They have the cuneiform. They have the hieroglyphics. The general public doesn't have knowledge. So what you saw in ancient times is just now happening, again, on a bigger scale with the establishment, having the knowledge, having the secrets, being able to track what you do and what you hear and what you watch. And then the final piece was that certain members of the tribe who would be given access to part of the priesthood would be given drugs. And if you read Ezekiel or if you read Revelation, the angels come and they say, take this, and they eat it, and it's sweet in the mouth, bitter in the stomach, and then they see the other dimensions. Now, that's what's in the Bible. Your backward preacher doesn't know that because they weren't there thousands of years ago. But that's what it is. So, oh, Timothy Leary, here's LSD. I'm the first to do this. Oh, Joe Rogan, here's DMT. Hey, yeah, everybody, it's cool. We're going to play Timothy Leary admitting it was the CIA, all of it. The publishers of Time Life books are some of the richest people in the country. Back in the 20s and 30s, they ran government operations before the OSS even existed, where they engaged in what you'd call witchcraft, but it wasn't witchcraft and like a lady with a black hat and a broom. That's what women would do when they would take hallucinogens and then put the broom between their legs as a form of sex magic, running around a fire, masturbating. So that's what all of this is, ladies and gentlemen, period. And I'm an expert because I've studied history. If you study history, it's all right there. So there it is, hiding in plain view. Somebody like Joe doesn't think we know this. And I'm just thinking, well, maybe he's just a low-level idiot following it. And then I figure out, no, he's actually in pole position to be the new Timothy Leary and beyond. And so you sit back and you watch this, and no, I don't want to take DMT, Joe. And no, I don't want to take ayahuasca with your buddies because I don't want to be around people like that, Hollywood folks, who obviously don't take it when you take it. And I've never taken it because I don't need to take it. And I'm not going to get into my own private issues, but I go to 62% oxygen. I always have. My head and neck's basically deformed. I have to have major surgery and I almost die every night. Most people die at 62% oxygen. I have near-death experiences every night. And that's why I have DMT every damn night, folks. I don't need to take DMT with Joe Rogan. Fine, I just told you my private issues. I've been to 2 different sleep studies. I want to do major surgery on me. I got a 20-inch neck. I got problems. I got to sleep basically sitting up with a mouth guard in my face. The CPAP machines don't work. I said I'd get Jan on, and I apologize. I'm going to go to him now. Problem is, I'm trying to explain to you the whole story here so you understand this isn't just us up here bitching about Joe Rogan. Our kids and everybody are being targeted with this crap, where in ancient times they would give people drugs to then invoke them into mind control. Mind control didn't just show up. The CIA and others are just codifying it into a set system of control. So that when you take this stuff, you're not with your family or you're not with real good people, you're with controllers, and they can then direct you into what they want, and now you're their slave. Now, I'm going to stop now, Jan. The rest of the hour, I'm not going to talk here other than introducing you and doing a plug, but your journey, let's start here. Your journey, who you are, how you met Joe, the whole DMT story, and then we'll get into as you woke up to him, and then the big picture of what's currently happening, because I've talked to you a lot about what's currently happening.
Like I said at the start of the show here, I met Joe in February 2003 at a friend's house, Jack Hare's house, ironically, who is the head of the California Hemp Initiative, et cetera. And back then, I believed in all of this stuff, and it was Jack that got me into a lot of this type of research on psychedelics and whatnot. But in 2003 or 2004, I gave Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo, for that matter, their first dose of DMT. I since regret all of that. I'm a Christian now. I should admit I don't follow any of my early research. The only reason why I keep the books out there, especially my second book, is because that's where I began to see the origins of this tied to the intelligence community with Gordon Wasson working with the CIA, Alan Dulles. I exposed all of that in my articles. You just showed one of my articles on screen, Spies in Academic Clothing. That's a very extensive article that it breaks down and exposes the entire foundations of the psychedelic community as the CIA's MKUltra program. I've got Tim Leary admitting that he was CIA, for instance. One of the quotes from that article: "I proceeded as an intelligence agent since 1962, understanding that the next war for control of this planet and beyond had to do with control of consciousness." Yes, he answered strongly, "I was a witting agent of the CIA." Now, a lot of people will argue, one of the most common arguments that I hear against my work is that because these plants and mushrooms and things are older than the CIA, they couldn't possibly be used for mind control. In fact, I've pulled up the original citations from the Aztecs from the 15th century. All of the citations that have been covered up by the ethnobotany community and all of the scholars show that Montezuma and these people used them to prepare their victims for human sacrifice. All of this has been covered up. I renamed psychedelic suggestogens back in 2014 after I published an article, Entheogens, What's in a Name, where I go through and I expose how they created the marketing programs by renaming them so that kids would take them. They wouldn't take suggestogens or hallucinogens or psychotomimetics. So Aldous Huxley, who was the head of the CIA's MKUltra program, or the chief engineer of it, he created, with Humphrey Osmond, created terms like psychedelic, etc. Humphrey Osmond created the term psychotomimetics, but they would create the term, the words, to market them and then rename them. Gordon Wasson, along with Professor Carl Ruck at Boston University, whom I personally think should be investigated for academic fraud. He's one of the key people behind this stuff still today, promoting this stuff out there. They created the name Entheogen, which means to generate God within. And so these people involved with the CIA and other intelligence agencies, they are who marketed these things to the youth and came up with these names, et cetera. Thanks for showing that on screen there. But they created the names to market these things. And so far, since I published these articles, I have not had one academic from the entire field, and this is going back 8 years, deal with my research honestly. They've ridiculed me, name-called at me, tried to get me back in line, et cetera. But they will not deal with the citations. I went to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Columbia University, Dartmouth, et cetera, and I polled and had these documents polled. I put together all of this research based on primary citations showing that the entire 60s counterculture, the rock music, the sex, drugs, all of that was part of Aldous Huxley's MKUltra program. It's based off of his book, The Brave New World. They want to model society after Huxley's book. Now, Huxley's book wasn't foretelling the future. Huxley's book was the blueprint that they were using, Alex, to do all of this stuff. You know, and what a lot of people don't understand is that it was actually Tim Leary who went before Congress in the 1960s and asked Congress to outlaw the drugs because the kids wouldn't do them if they were legal. So they wanted to make it look like Leary's spiritual message was being suppressed.
Stay right there. And I can back everything you're saying.
There you go.
Stay right there. And again, Julian Huxley was part of a secret British government genetic engineering program I'll tell you about briefly. And his brother headed up the UN Global Program for UNESCO, and he's absolutely right. And then he wrote a book admitting it all, Brave New World Revisited. Now, I want people to listen to me very, very carefully, because by the end of the next hour, I am going to lay out from my deep research, historical research, what all the ancients said and the Bible, what the master plan is. Because Tim Cook, big tech companies, the CIA research programs, all of it, have believed since the time in the 1850s when Galton, Wedgwood, Huxley, all of those families, 6 families, the Blairs were involved on the edge of it, George Orwell. They all intermarried as part of a British government genetics program that came out of botany, and our guest is a botanist, that's why he knows about all this, from his own perspective. I haven't even read his books. We're saying the same stuff because this is what happened, okay? But from different perspectives. They began to take ayahuasca and other things, and that's where he got his theory of the species and all that he brought back from Galapagos. And if you actually read the letters and writings, and I've seen documentaries about him, he said that he was communicating with spirits that appeared to be like the classical demons in the Bible. This is Charles Darwin. And again, folks, if you've read history books and actually read big volumes about these guys, I remember reading this when I was like 20 years old, reading about Darwin. And it was just about Darwin's travels and his life and his other theories. He was told by interdimensional spirits the whole theory of this. And then he came back and told Galton, who's the father of modern eugenics and biometrics and everything, we've got to find the DNA. We've got to find what makes it up. We're going to recode it. We're going to live forever. But we've got to reduce the world population. And we've got to breed our families together to create these supermen. Well, most of them ended up being in mental institutions or dying young. But the Huxley brothers, Aldous Huxley and his brother, Julian Huxley, ended up running the entire program. And then at Princeton and other universities, like Berkeley in '61 before he died, Huxley came out, Aldous Huxley, and gave speeches and admitted a lot of this and said, we're going to have a ruling class that lives to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, but the general public, well, first we're going to splice the sexes, then we're going to have like 4-foot-tall dwarf creatures that we sexualize with hormones at age 3 so that they are basically sterile and only live 20 years. Now, I have articles right here, and we're going to our guest, from mainstream news, where they're now going to give 5-year-olds drugs and sterilize them so that they're not boys ever. Here's an article right here, please. Britain's first transgender family reveals son 5 is also transitioning. This is all Tavistock Institute, same people. Okay, here's another one. Google announcing that they're going to stop using the term family because the family is hurtful. So, suboid goblin creatures. I'm going to shut up now and go back to our guest here, ladies and gentlemen. And Jan Irvin is our guest, tlogosmedia.com. And we appreciate him. How much of what I'm saying juxtaposes with what you want to get into. But then I want to just go back to the beginning. She said we do that first. And to talk about Joe's transformation, because I'm really trying to figure out exactly how far down the rat hole he's gone.
And just to clarify, it's logosmedia.com. There's no T there. Just LOGOS media.com. And I also wanted to add to that, Thomas Henry Huxley, Julian and Aldous Huxley's grandfather, was Darwin's propaganda manager, called Darwin's Bulldog. And so it goes all the way back then. And before Thomas Henry Huxley, his father, George Huxley, was working at the #1 private school in the UK, teaching people how to be spies and teaching mathematics and stuff like this. So this goes all the way back through the Huxley family, as far back as I can trace it, or that I have traced it, into the early 1800s.
And I apologize for getting your website wrong. I've been there many times. I haven't read your books, but I guess we got sent T-Logos Media is the deal, but it's logosmedia.com, logosmedia.com. And also there's the triviumeducation.com. Is that correct?
Correct. And you and I had actually discussed that site back in 2011. Go ahead. Okay,
so let's pull back here. I never even tried to look into this stuff. Just studying history, I ran into it. The learned all know this. I mean, as I just said earlier, they have major university symposiums that are public where they admit this plan. But let's go to the end, and then we'll go back to the end later in more detail. Where are they trying to take us in the end game? Why are they trying to overthrow our health, our vision, our intelligence, promising us some promised land, but really, just like all the other cultures that took these drugs, opened up these gates to lower dimensions, the only revelation they get is from some very fallen, nasty creatures?
Well, Aldous Huxley called it the final revolution, and he wanted to get people so dumbed down to a point from drugs. In the Brave New World, he calls it soma, etc. In other articles, he talks about dumbing them down with barbiturates, but it was the final revolution. He wanted people so dumbed down, alpha, betas, deltas, epsilons, etc., that they could not rebel against the elites, against these factions. Of course, Aldous Huxley was a Fabian socialist, and a lot of these guys were, but you know, they are all a part of this agenda just to create this final revolution so that the people can never revolt again against the elite and stand up against all of this stuff. So they sell pseudo-spirituality, you know, like you mentioned earlier, Joe Rogan is now the head poster boy, sort of taking the position of both Timothy Leary and Terence McKenna. Of course, Terence McKenna, I exposed years ago that he admitted that he was recruited and worked in public relations and deep background operations. And of course, all of this was spun against me that Terrence McKenna was really saying that he was working for the mushrooms. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. He was on the run from the FBI. He had been caught for smuggling, and they recruited him. It's as simple as that. It's cut and dry. There's been a lot of spin and false attacks against me out there. Joe Rogan and Dennis McKenna even did attacks on me. Joe pretended that he went into my database and just saw a bunch of strings and connections, and it was all guilt by association. There's 12,000 connections in the database with citations, heavily cited. You know, people can spend months in there going through my brain database that people can find on the top of my website there, and just, you know, spend some time going through these connections and reading the citations.
I agree, and we're going to get into that next hour. But and we've hit the history of it, and I know what you're saying is right from these people's own statements. We could play Timothy Leary, you know, saying I work for the CIA, instead of you just reading the quote. And in fact, we'll do that next hour. But let's get into your awakening, personalizing you. People don't like Joe Rogan. My audience hates it when I'm nice to him, hates it when I talk. They get it. But they want to hear about you, a Christian, how you came out of this, how you woke up.
Well, you know, in 2009, I got the Trivium method from a man by the name of Gino Denning, and I had already been working on my 2008 book, The Holy Mushroom, and that was when I realized that Gordon Wasson and these guys were CIA. I was pacing back and forth in the backyard one day when it all clicked in my head what was going on. It took me till 2012 to be able to prove it. But what happened, you know, is I started going in, and all of the people that I was working with, and I was working with about 65 different professors and researchers. And just to give you all an example, I was working on this very large book project, about 1,000 pages here, Entheogens and Consciousness, a comprehensive overview of the psychedelic studies. 2/3 of the way through the project, I decided not to publish it, and I realized that all of the people that I was working with were on the take. They were dirty. They were misdirecting people. And I started noticing a pattern as I was going through checking all of their research and everything. And I realized that the whole thing was a fraud. And
yes, they didn't discover mushrooms. The Vikings were taking them 20,000 years ago. But let's just stop right there.
I don't even know about that. But, you know, we do know that the Aztecs were using this stuff to, to mind control their victims, like at Montezuma's coronation. He had up to 8,000 human sacrifices of slaves. And there was a researcher Singer back in the 50s or 60s that Wasson got into a tiff with, because Singer had exposed that the Aztecs were using the mushrooms to prepare their victims for human sacrifice. And I have some of these quotes here, actually, if we want to get into that later. But, they twisted the citations. And like, here's Diego Duran, History of the Indies of New Spain. And he admits that he was not exaggerating. Wasson had to omit the entire first paragraph there. It's from page 407 of his book. And this is from the 1500s. And when the sacrifices had finished on the steps of the courtyard, the steps of the courtyard were bathed in human blood, everyone went to eat raw mushrooms. With this food, they went out of their minds and were in a worse state than if they had drank a great quantity of wine. They became so inebriated and witless that many of them took their lives with their own hands. And then under the strong influence of these mushrooms, they saw visions and had revelations about the future, since the devil spoke to them in their drunken madness. But all of this has been published for 500 years. They've hidden it. And
no, I totally agree. And
converted it into a religion.
That's right. Jan, stay there. And by the way, I can give you mainstream articles. The Norse, all of them, the whole planet was taking mushrooms. So yes, they were taking them before they went into war. So that's true. Jan Irvin is our guest. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com, Newswars.com. You know, I had a whole giant new product. The biggest product we've launched since we've launched more than 50 products in the last 6-7 years at InfoWarsLife.com. Haven't even told you about it because there's no way to really do it justice. But I probably, at the start of the next segment, I'm going to run a 1-minute ad that basically talks about it, and it's amazing. This is the alternative to, quote, energy drinks, energy pills, all the nootropics that are dirty. This is, we went to top researchers that have spent a lot of money. I wanted to do this a couple years ago just to get the researchers from 2 different firms to give us the information. That took over a year. And then there was a year getting it developed because it's so clean and so good. And wait till we launch this new product. I'm very, very excited about it. And quite frankly, well, just wait till you use it. I believe this is going to end up being the #1 pre-workout, but long-haul truck driving. I mean, you name it, but in a healthy way. Wait till we launch it, probably tomorrow or so. But I'm going to talk about it a little bit in the next segment. Jan Irvin is a very interesting fellow, very smart. Everything he's saying, I basically have researched on my own, and I think is accurate. We were just talking about the Unabomber being in the CIA. I showed that article. In fact, we ought to print those actual articles out. How the CIA created the Unabomber. There it is, CIA infiltrated 17 area groups out of LSD. But he wanted to disagree with me about berserkers or Vikings or Northmen taking hallucinogens in berserking raids. And so I'm impressed he's done his research on that. And he thinks this is part of the brainwashing to push a pagan, drug-addled Europe idea as if we should accept it as our new culture.
Absolutely correct. And the main person who promoted the idea of the berserker rage being Amanita muscaria mushrooms was, again, Professor Carl Ruck out of Boston University, whom I exposed in the last segment, whom I think should be investigated for academic fraud. I've read his books and things. But he worked with, and Gordon Wasson worked with Robert Graves. Part of that pagan history was created by Sir James George Fraser of the Royal Society. And the Royal Society is a big spinner of false science and things like that. Aldous or Julian Huxley was a member of the Royal Society, as was Darwin, and a lot of these families. But they're really behind that. Another one who sold the pagan history thing is Mircea Eliade out of the Chicago University, who was also working for the CIA, and he was the professor of guys like Robert Forty, who were the first guys to. Robert Forty basically set up the first street drug lab for MDMA to help that get on the street. Set up by Sasha Shulgin, who was working for the DEA and. Also was Bohemian and stuff like that. So a lot of these guys were on the inside and on the take. I don't trust a lot of their research. I've been working on a project to expose the false, quote-unquote, pagan history of Europe. I think the Europeans always worshipped Logos, or truth as God, and I think that this has been a manufactured history put on them. That is my own opinion. It's in the early preliminary stages of that research, but I think within the next year or so we'll be able to prove that.
Jan, you're a smart guy, and I think as Christ said, he had other flocks, so his spirit was in the earth, and I think that's validated. But the Bible warns of all the different tribes getting into pharmakia and how that opened up gates to the devil. And I think clearly, though, they've dug up stuff all over Europe, and I have family that were archaeologists, and they do find that everybody had the apothecary who a lot of times was taking some of his own stuff and would get into darkness because they were taking it.
Well, witchcraft, but Genesis 3 warns against this stuff too.
No, I know, but I think to say that every ancient culture had this going on, places where it took over, you had the Aztecs, where the demons told them, kill everybody who's handsome and smart. I mean, it's insane. It's a damn like evil interdimensional broadcast. Kill yourselves, kill yourselves, kill yourselves. And now it's all over the news. Kill yourselves, kill yourselves, kill yourselves, kill yourselves.
Millions of dollars would be spent on LSD research at universities throughout the country. And word would begin to spread on campus about this so-called mind-blowing drug. And suddenly, it was the counterculture of the 60s.
I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
Dr. Timothy Leary, the 1960s Johnny Appleseed of LSD.
The CIA funded and supported and encouraged hundreds of young psychiatrists to experiment with this drug. The fallout from that was that the young psychologists began taking it themselves, discovering that it was an intelligence-enhancing, consciousness-raising experience.
I know that some of the studies in which the CIA had supported used as subjects people who later became strong proselytizers of LSD. So in that sense, yes, I think it did sustain the perpetuation of the use of the drug. And it's rather ironic, isn't it?
It's kind of like Dr. Salk and the top scientists that he worked with going on NPR before they died and saying, and going on PBS, oh, we knew that all the shots had SV40 cancer virus, killed about 99 million people in the U.S., but there are too many people. Should I dig that clip up for you? Or how about Walter Cronkite saying, I sit at the right hand of Satan. Hail Satan. Let me play that for you because they're not joking around. In fact, the last time I talked to Joe, he basically said, no, there's another problem, Alex. There's another problem where people are upset with you. And I basically figured it out talking to him, but he wouldn't say it. It's that I'm a Christian. And that's what this comes down to. So let me ask questions this segment. You can keep rolling. I know you want to get into academic stuff, and you're a botanist and the trailblazer. And I've looked at, you're the guy that was introducing DMT to Joe, both figuratively and literally, as an idea and as the substance. And then you figured out that you were being handled and being put forward by the puppet masters. Jan Irvin is our guest, logosmedia.com. But humor me to go through these different pieces of this. And again, if you're a TV viewer, you can see this. Washington Post. CIA infiltrated 17 area groups, gave out LSD. Okay, this is from the 60s. This came out in 1973, a year before I was born. Panel finds CIA broke law, defends record. So there you go. And I've talked to family that was at UT in the mid-60s, and the government was there putting out the LSD on campus. I can tell you. And so it goes way beyond that. Now they're giving you the super hardcore mind control drugs that they believe open up a dimensional gate where they are given advanced knowledge. But to then build what the entities want built on this side to open a gate or turn their atmosphere into what they're building. They're changing our world into theirs. Now, people can say, this is crazy. No, I'm telling you from research what the adherents in Silicon Valley think. Why Tim Cook's got eyes the size of saucers under big lights. Because the guy is on some type of high-tech drug. And they're all literally on drugs all the time. It's admitted mainstream news, quote, microdosing. Well, that's how they trick you to start taking it every day. They're not microdosing, they're megadosing. And it's why they all die so young, like Steve Jobs. That's why Steve Jobs wouldn't let his kids have iPads or phones before he died. It's why Bill Gates won't do it. So, Jan, you can come back, by the way, many times. I mean, I love you to death, and you click with the show and you know what you're talking about. But this is out of the Commission on CIA Activities in the United States. That's the Unabomber, was in a CIA mind control program. Timothy McVeigh was. Sirhan. This has all been in the newspaper, but when I say it, they go, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, thinking we don't have the actual news clipping like I just showed people. So this is a breakaway civilization. They believe they're taking over. From your experience, mid-level and then high level, what do the average adherents of this think? What do they think they're part of? Do they not know the bigger, more sinister interdimensional invasion plan that this really is? And yes, folks, that's what it is. Next year's News Today. In a couple of years, you'll hear this everywhere. And people are going to be like, I'm with the invasion. I'm with what they're offering. It's why these billionaire people are saying that we're really alternate dimensions, and this one is held by something sinister, and we're going to build alternate dimensions, and we're going to have a rebellion within dimensions. The Bible again, Lucifer, the angels, 1/3. So they're already introducing, we're going to have reality competition. We're going to have competing realities now. But first you have to overthrow the existing logos or God's truth or worshiping truth, God. So I understand what you're saying, Jan, but let's get into the adherents themselves so that they can know that we know more than they know, which is the only way to get them out of it. So if you want real knowledge below the dimensions you're in, but actually above them, you need to understand that this is the real way of truth. So explain to people your deep research, what you believe the end game of this is, not just ending the family and exterminating humanity, but who's running it, who's behind it, and what the DMT does, what the ayahuasca does, what these molecules do really in the brain, and why these loving entities are there, lovey, cutie caking on people if they think they can trick you as spirit guides. If they can't, they'll try to torture the hell out of you and make you die in that state. That's the real experience, is why it's so dangerous.
Well, the drugs cause hypersuggestion first and foremost, and I'm glad that you brought up microdosing. That was actually launched by Dr. James Fadiman, who was the last doctor to do legal LSD research under MK Ultra in 1970 or 71. I actually interviewed him years ago, and then when I began exposing all of this, he actually came out attacking me and trying to spend my research. But there was a whole team under Dr. Henry A. Murray at Harvard, which included Leary and many of these other guys. And Ted Kaczynski was a part of the experiments done under Henry A. Murray's department. And Kaczynski inadvertently had enough of it. He later figured out what was going on when he was professor of mathematics at Berkeley, and he came out trying to bomb or kill these people that were involved in MKUltra. Now, James Fadiman brags that he created the computer mouse. But, you know, under Henry A. Murray's department, we had a number of MKUltra people, Dr. Thomas Chiu, Richard or Dick Price, who was one of the guys who helped create the CIA's Esalen Institute up in
and hold on one second. I know you love to get into all the academic background, who these people are, and we'll do that and we'll do future shows. But big picture for people. What do they believe? I mean, I know what they're doing, and I've actually talked to some of these people. They believe they are in connection with advanced technologies and with interdimensional beings, and they believe they're getting this advanced knowledge and then building these systems in this dimension, and that somehow they're going to be rewarded. But first, they've got to reduce the world population down to basically zero. They've got to merge with silicon gods. They've got to do everything that Elon Musk came on Joe Rogan's show and repeated word for word what I said when Joe asked him about the nature of reality. So I'm telling people, Jesus is offering eternal life. They're saying you get it here on this planet by loading your consciousness into a computer, but your body has to die. I was saying that 20 years ago. Now that was all over the news yesterday. So they're going operational with this, is what I'm saying.
There was a doctor by the name of Dr. Andrija Puharic working with the Esalen Institute, et cetera, who ran the Council of Nine, and that's exactly what they claim to have been doing. He was working with CIA and Mossad agent Uri Geller, and he also did the Betty and Barney Hill thing. He was behind that with John G. Fuller. He had worked with John G. Fuller down in Brazil on a lot of those, mind control projects. John G. Fuller is who did the Pont Saint-Esprit attack on the village in France, where they killed 6 or 7 people there and dosed the entire village and made people go crazy. But that was all part of the CIA's MKUltra program, ties into Andrija Puharic and what you were just saying about this interdimensional stuff. Aside from Andrija Puharic's team, I don't know how many of them are involved in it on that level or not. I don't know. But anyway, we can go on from there.
All right, when we come back, because folks want to know about this, they want to hear it on the ground level about you and Joe and the first time you got him to take DMT and what, on average, people do see when they take DMT. But again, folks, I've never taken DMT. And you need to understand that DMT, ayahuasca, most of the groups getting you into it know that you'll never have an experience like it again. And whether you have a bad experience or good experience, they want to program you in the state that they're the guru. This is how the CIA put little kids under mind control and adults. So these are mind control groups, cults operating out in the open. Be warned. It's all about, ladies and gentlemen, accessing certain race consciousness memories, but only certain ones. Now, let me tell you something here. I grew up, because my mom's a historian, my dad's a doctor, and they went to UT, and my dad went to UT when he was in high school. He's, one of the top 6 highest scores in his SATs or whatever they were called then. So he was in the Plan 2 program and all that. And I just grew up hearing conversations and things with their friends over from places like San Francisco. And I remember sitting there when my mom's college friend, who came by a few times a year, would sit there and just lay out the different programs and the different groups, and this is the research they were doing, and I'd hear terms like CIA, and my parents weren't in that. They just knew people that were like, oh yeah, we're out here in San Francisco, and we're testing different drugs, and we've broken through the dimensional gates, and we're communicating with the elves, the clockwork elves and all this stuff. So I heard all that stuff for anybody put in a book. You're sitting there, a little kid hearing about elves, in a conversation, while your parents are sitting around the dinner table. It's pretty interesting. My parents are straightforward, professional people, and they were Christians. They're like, well, that sounds like demons, and then their friends like, oh no, you just don't get it, blah blah blah. And When my mom really, really became a hardcore Christian over the years, her friend finally said, you know, I don't like you. You're a Christian, and we just don't want to be around you anymore. So that's what this comes down to at the final equation, is that there's a bunch of hidden stuff. That's what a cult means going on. And the establishment doesn't want you to know what's really going on. They want to control a little bit of it and only let you see what they want you to see. And so I think that's what we're coming down to here. But you have to understand, since then, I have read what the globalists actually say in their white papers. And when they go to these billionaire Silicon Valley retreats where there's like 300 people there, they are all obsessed with what they're building and the things they've made deals with. And they can't believe how good all this stuff works that they get told. And they're all arguing how many people are going to be left on Earth. And, well, the entities say we've got to kill everybody to transcend. It kind of becomes a repeat of the Gnostic thing from thousands of years ago. We got to kill everybody, and then we're all equal. And it just goes on and on, like the Muslim belief that Armageddon happens, but then God just kills everybody. We don't even go to heaven. We just cease to exist. So you can't get more satanic than this. And it's a transmission. Kill yourselves, destroy yourselves, kill, steal, and destroy. So Jan Irvin, we got a longer segment coming up. This is a short segment, but get in to Joe Rogan. Get into, because people want to know about that specifically, because it's interesting, and about the process, so people also know how dangerous it is if you take DMT. You and Joe had a good experience. Eddie Bravo, who's a wonderful guy, not part of this, he did not have a good experience. So go ahead and reveal for the first time ever when you got Joe Rogan to take DMT.
Well, we were at Joe's house and his house in Bell Canyon. And this was, like I said, 2003, 2004, in his little movie theater that he had there. And, you know, I had been doing research on it, and I believed all the hype by guys like Professor or Dr. Rick Strassman, who did the DMT, the Spirit Molecule book. And he's really the one that hyped all of this originally. And his book, which you can't verify really any of it because it's behind confidential research reports from the people who participated in his study, which was funded by the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. But we were at Joe's place, and I don't remember who went first, but there was a guy, Johnny, there also, and we all just took our turns. You know, it's you know, you do kind of see some bizarre sort of demonic world. A lot of people claim to see elves and different sorts of creatures in there. I saw sort of a checkerboard sort of world with round and different shaped objects shaped like checkerboards.
Which again is very Masonic, very, very MC Escher.
Yeah, well, they're true that. And but Eddie Bravo actually kind of had a bad trip, and of course Eddie Bravo's a fighter, and he's the only guy who took down Horsey Gracie in a fight back then, jiu-jitsu. And you know, he didn't have a good experience. He started trying to fight. I was glad that Joe was there because at least Joe knew jiu-jitsu to try to help control Eddie from going, speaking of berserk, on us. But, you know, so...
well, repeat what you told me, though, because he was in his prime then, and, I mean, he was going to unscrew both your heads. Thank God Joe talked him out of it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say he just wanted to fight in general and fight everybody in the room.
Well, you said, quote, we're lucky he didn't break both our necks.
Yeah, we are lucky he didn't break both of our necks because, you know, I'm no jiu-jitsu fighter, and I couldn't have taken Eddie on. I couldn't have talked him down. So I'm glad that Joe was there to be able to do that. But, yeah, you know... it was
well, go into details, because you described Joe taking it. This is interesting, and Joe made no secret about this show. But describe Joe on DMT versus Eddie when Eddie took it. Well,
Joe just kind of sat back in the couch and relaxed and went into his little world for 6 or 7 minutes and came out very peacefully. But Eddie went full blown fight mode, like he was on the MMA mat or the UFC mat, yeah, like that, getting ready or in the middle of a full-blown fight. And so, you know, there is no way that me or Johnny could have handled that guy, you know. And I still talk to Eddie on occasion. He's a good guy, and he and I have sort of stayed in touch.
What did Eddie tell you he saw? What made him so upset?
You know, I don't know what he saw exactly. I mean, these experiences are wild, but he just thought that you know, he was in a fight and ready on the mat, ready
Well,
to
that's why I
fight,
warn
ready
people.
to go.
If you're really inherently good, and Eddie really is a good spirit, you can feel it. He really is a good. These demons know and attack the hell out of you. And I know people in this building who are really good people who took it, and it's experience I had without ever taking it in deep dreams and things when I was younger. We'll talk about when we come back, but you're basically transported to another dimension. It's like a spaceship. And there's demons, and there's people all basically, you can see their spirits, all it is, and they're all slaves. And there's these horrible creatures, you're in a lower dimension, that are like torturing them forever. And then they go, oh, you're here. You're going to die. We're strangling you. Your heart ventricles are failing. We're going to rip you. And when you believe me, you'll never escape it. If you have kids, we'll get them too. And we're going to tear down your world unless you join us. And then you might be able to be at our level. Then they start threatening you like an interrogation to join them and saying, we know this and we know that. And like, we're going to tell you something that's going to happen in the future. And I'm like 14 having dreams going, what the hell is this? And I'd wake up all sweaty from these and throw up like I'd been somewhere else. And then a month later, the exact thing would happen that something with frickin' horns was telling me was coming down. So I'm telling you, folks, why every culture talks about it, because this stuff's real. When I grow up, I want to get this population off world, figure out the secrets of the universe, and break through the Illuminati for real enlightenment. Here's the bottom line. Everybody knows this from lore. Every culture, every ancient text says that there are entities and creatures that can't be seen. Just like electricity can't be seen most of the time, or most forms of light. And they've proven dimensions below and above and other dimensions around that. And that these entities, most of the ones that will actually contact you, because see, God doesn't usually get involved unless you ask God in. God's free will, but these other ones, they don't. They're bad. And they'll give you knowledge and they'll give you power in a Faustian bargain. But they want your soul. That just means they want you to go with them. And these folks mean business. And if you look at how the globalists and all the top people who are being given power on this planet, they're all weak, pathetic husk of who they were, who are zombie-like trying to carry out these operations because at their levels, they're horrified, empty husk. And that's what's really, really sad about all this. You know, I was told by somebody that had dinner with Tim Cook a few weeks ago that Tim Cook is, I was talking to a person that's, you know, a billionaire, connected, and they said, yeah, Tim Cook, I was there with all these people, and Tim Cook just kept talking crap about you and how you made fun of him being gay. Now imagine in his weird world, he runs this $1 trillion company with slave camps in China where they kill gay people. And he's not just on TV talking crap about me, how horrible I am. He's saying I'm anti-gay, because, and they said, well, what do you say? Well, he talked about me in China and said I was anti-gay for letting people get murdered because they're gay. See how that works? It was calling on his conscience. It wasn't that I said he was gay, which he admits he is. It's that I was calling him out as a fraud and I was using it as a shield. But think of how petty that is. These text messages got released, got leaked on Jeff Bezos cheating on his wife. And he's in there bragging, going, oh, yeah, baby, I'm powerful. I know Bono. Bono's been a total nerd for 30 years. He scams 99% of the money, literally, that he steals from Africans for aid money. But you're like, how are these people so stupid and not powerful and not smart? Well, there's a group behind them that is smart, but is totally, you never see them. They don't want any attention. They're behind the curtain. And they are carrying out a mission. They are soldiers to turn the planet off, to teach you to hate yourself, to kill your life force, and to make you accept eternal death. They want your life. They want your soul. They want your children. They want to kill you. That's it. And now it's pretty obvious, isn't it, when they're at city council saying, we're going to groom your kids, and we're going to put them on drugs, and your little boys are going to be ours, and you're not going to stop us. And we're going to have little boys in gay magazines posing naked with men. This is the takeover, the overthrow of reality. And so if you don't understand that, you understand nothing. Don't worry about losing your house or your life, folks. These people want your soul. And they want you to throw away men and women together, combining the genetic code and creating a new creature whose body is the composite of all those ancestors coming together in communion, whose DNA literally resonates as an antenna to higher dimensions through which we literally commune with God and our ancestors. Now, the Bible, Christians groups say there is no such thing as ghosts, but then there's ghosts all throughout the Bible, you know, with Saul and David and all of it. The point is, it's not that. It's like a hologram transmission of something that was already there. Like, that's not Hollywood in the new Alien movie, where, you know, they go in the thing, and even though it's been thousands of years, they detonate this pulse, and it sees where people were walking, you know, 1,000 years before. It's basically that, but it's more than that, because our ancestors that have gone on to higher levels then anticipated things and sent transmissions back. And the reason I know this is I've had dreams about the whole thing now, just in the last year. The whole thing diagrammed, how it all works. It's just incredible. And then I can go back into science, and I can see every level of that. But I'm going to go back to our guest. He'll join us again the next few weeks for 2 hours, 3 hours. He can even host an hour by himself if he'd like to here on the show. But I'm going ahead and laying out all the cards here on the table, okay? I mean, I haven't told you everything, folks. But the occultists tried to recruit me early. I mean, like 12 years old, over and over again. It was like devil's advocate. Every time I turned around, they were trying to recruit me. And I don't mean some meth heads or something. I mean rich people, powerful people, you name it. Because they all know there's these abilities. They have little bitty abilities. I have huge abilities. A lot of you have giant abilities. And they're trying to see who's got it and recruit them, because they want to understand how to be God at this level when you're already part of God and don't need to even do that. So, Jan, I've been ranting here. You go ahead and take over with whatever you want to get into. And when we go a little bit the next hour, I'll push our guest host, Mike Adams, back, because I've been butting in. But this is about me, too, and this is about you. So that's why I'm sharing all this, and it's really hardcore. But let me ask this question, and you can cover whatever you want. From your experience, people need to know, though, how dangerous DMT and ayahuasca is. And, again, just at a temporal level, there's cults everywhere using this stuff now, and the media is hyping it so these cults get set up, and there's usually a globalist or corporate group behind protecting them. I mean, it's illegal to put 1,000 or 2,000 people a year, mainly wealthy people they target, on hallucinogenic, super hardcore drugs, and then do this inside the United States. This is being protected by the system. And just at a temporal political level, there is an attempt to get the decision makers in every town in a cult. We're facing an occult ayahuasca DMT takeover. And people like Joe Rogan are the flashing sign on the hill saying it's a great thing. What do you say to that?
Well, I absolutely agree with you. Let me just read a quote here, and I just sent it to your producer. I don't know if she can show it on screen here, but psychedelic substances like ayahuasca create a state of hypersuggestibility in which persons are very open to being influenced by others. Many traditional cultures have utilized this condition to inculcate cultural values and behaviors in young people as they receive initiation into adulthood. In the West, countercultural values can be inculcated in young people when using these psychedelics, especially when using them in an antinomian context. And of course, antinomian means of or relating to the view that Christians are released by grace from the obligation of observing the moral law. So this is exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get people away from observing the moral law. They want, you know, people to not even be able to tell the difference between boys and girls and all of this stuff, as you've exposed, as I've been exposing for years. You know, and even some of the artwork that you've shown on screen there by Alex Gray, you know, he's one of them too. He runs a big occult temple along the Hudson River in New York. But this is the agenda. It's to get people to think that, you know, the Bible and Christianity is ridiculous, that you shouldn't figure out what logos is. You shouldn't figure out that truth is God. You should get into all of this moral relativism stuff. And, you know, all of these moral relativists actually think that they have the moral high ground. I had somebody just yesterday saying that, you know, women should have the right to, you know, there's been over 1.522 billion abortions since abortion was legalized worldwide. And you know, they actually think that they have the moral high ground when it's the largest genocide. It brings a whole new meaning to the term feminazi, but it's the largest genocide in human history. Stalin, Trotsky, Lenin, all of them don't even touch what the feminists have done with this genocide, but it's to get people hyper suggestible, get them away from observing the moral law, understanding the difference between truth and lies. There you go. That's exactly it right there. Worldwide since 1980, 1.522 billion abortions right there on screen, folks. This stuff is disgusting.
I want to say something profound. For the humanity to make the jump level from this egg, then we'll create unlimited planets. We have to continue to have the replacement rate. That we're being sabotaged right now and told, no, the way to save the earth is kill the species. Now, if that isn't an alien transmission, what isn't? Oh, yeah, they're always looking for signals from space. How about interdimensional signals? Oh, we're getting them. I want to warn everyone listening all over the country. Satan, these interdimensional forces, the Bible tells us about right in plain view. It's all there on a planet in the middle of the universe. The Bible warns us it's all accurate, not the preacher's interpretations, like Christ said. And they've had holy hell, the Buddha fields here in Austin, where, oh, this guy would put you in between dimensions to talk to God, clearly giving people DMT. Oh, here, drink this. This is the water of life. And then, oh, my gosh, this guy's taking me there. Oh, think if you didn't know you were taking ayahuasca or you didn't know you were taking DMT. And then what does everybody see? They see elves or goat creatures, even atheists. All these famous atheists go, yeah, I didn't believe in God, but then there was like floating Vishnu and goats but here's what happens. If they know beyond being a Christian, if you have God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit on you, if you take DMT, and I've talked to a lot of people that are just really loving, nice people. Their parents were Christians. They were baptized. They don't really know it's real, but they're really nice people. Nice people take DMT, like scientist types. He's nice, but you can tell he's very scientific. Jan Irvin here with us with Logos Media. He's all, well, I saw checkered boards and the diagrams of the whole systems and the whatever it was. You know, he saw kind of the mathematics of it because he's into mathematics. Let me tell you something, folks. I know a lot of people who became mentally ill after they took this. And this was around in the 80s and 90s. They would say, oh, man, these guys are from the government. They've got some new synthetic stuff. They would describe, oh, yeah, you ought to see all this cool-ass demons and stuff we see. You ought to take it. Here, take this yellow powder when I'm like 15 years old. I'm like, no frickin' thanks. So here's the deal. They're testing all this on you right now. They've got 20-something% of the public on psychotropics that put you in a hallucination state, but without all the visuals. Very, very highly suggestible. That's why it says on the insert can make you be homicidal and commit mass murder. And every mass shooter has been on it at schools. They all wear black trench coats. They all love the devil. They love Stalin. They love Hitler. They love shoot-'em-up games. Not that shoot-'em-up games are bad, but it's a simulation for them who are in another world. They all have those eyes. It's not a 1,000-yard stare from being in World War I or World War II. Being up 3-4 days, off and on for years, fighting and killing. It's the 1,000-yard stare from being over to the other side of oblivion and somebody else is driving. You imagine the thrill of a lower dimensional creature that's sunk into a lower dimension because whatever planet or system they came from, they were hateful and bad, so they resonate to each other, like for like. Being able to jump in because you take these drugs or the TV mesmerizes you and get control of you like an avatar. Hollywood's telling you what it is. It's true. It's real. And they're jumping in and controlling you and taking you for a joyride. And what does a punk meth head do, 15-year-old that steals your Ferrari? When they're done, they crap in the front seat and run it off a cliff. So you get involved with these demons. They want to crap in your front seat and run you off a cliff. Because let me tell you something. You talk about existential envy of people for folks that are better looking or smarter than them. Humans are in the image of God, so amazing, so powerful, that these demons have such hatred of us because we are whole levels better than them and have the potential to go all the way up to God. And that's the big secret here today. And I'll get into more of it after Jan leaves us, but I want to give him the floor for this segment now and the next. And then I will tell you, according to the globalists, not me, but notice when I say this, you think it'd be so discrediting. The media would pick this up. They keep their mouths zipped because I'm giving you the big secrets. They go, oh, Jones says there's slave colonies on Mars. Never said that. They don't say Jones says all this because they are freaked out. Tim Cook's like, how does he know I'm on synthetic Zyklon level molecule, whatever? Because I know, dumbass. I know all about it. I temporarily know, and then I also interdimensionally know. So getting back to Jan Irvin with logosmedia.com, please continue.
All right. Well, you know, I wanted to dive in here for a minute into some of the CIA rock bands that came out of the 60s and 70s, like the Grateful Dead, full-on CIA. I've got Bob Weir admitting that they're CIA, they're at Bohemian Grove, et cetera, a number of the members. But, you know, it's Uncle Sam playing in a rock and roll band. The Doors tied into it. You know, Dave McGowan and I did some shows
the Doors
on
admitted
this.
that they were a mass riot CIA mind control operation. And so why did they kill everybody at 27?
You know, I don't know about that. You know, either that or they just fake their deaths and go on to another, you know, another project. But, you know, most of the bands out of the psychedelic 60s were CIA. I recommend people looking up my series with Dr. Hans Utter, Music, Mind Control, and Psychobiology on my YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist there of all of this. But full on CIA, you got, you know, guys like, oh, shoot. Now I'm forgetting his name. Anyway, the whole band of them, but you know, he's out there promoting gun control and all this stuff with these.
Charlie Manson was a LSD pusher for the CIA.
Yeah, and I actually have him in my database as well. But oh shoot, now you know John Perry Barlow that ran the Electronic Freedom Foundation. He was a songwriter for the CIA. He was, you know, or for the Grateful Dead, he was working with them. The Merry Pranksters, CIA, they actually had a number of buses running around the country. It wasn't just one of them. Even, you know, the Millbrook Mansion, where Tim Leary and Dr. Ralph Metzner, et cetera, they were doing their human experiments. That was all funded by the Mellon banking family. The Millbrook Mansion was owned by Billy Mellon Hitchcock and his sister, who funded the Grateful Dead. She ran If New York for Timothy Leary and things like that. But all of these
Let's
people
get into
were
John
tied.
Lennon. Before John Lennon died.
Oh, man. Yeah, he's another bad one. John Lennon was definitely CIA and MI6 as far as I can tell.
But let's expand. Before he died, and I've got it somewhere, he did protest rock that talked about Satanism, the Illuminati, how they were evil and began to turn against him. And I don't want to get into details because it's off record, but I've talked to his closest intimates, and they basically relayed all this to me, that the government actually came to their house after he was killed and just said, well, you shut up about how we killed him, or we'll kill you too, because he wasn't going to put up with it anymore.
Yeah, you know, there was a clip of him coming out and exposing some of this. I don't know how sincere it was. I don't know if he's one of these rock megastars that faked their death or not. But he was definitely
I don't think he faked his death. But what I'm saying is, he said the globalists want to reduce the population. It's all a lie. I think John Lennon's one that got away. You
think so? You know, I don't know. I mean, we could definitely look at them more. I'm just pulling up my
let me ask you this.
here.
Why would his family call me and tell me all that?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't hear the conversation. So,
well, I'm telling you, Jan, you don't think I make stuff up, do you?
I'm not saying you are, but, you know, I do know the Beatles were SRI and Tavistock operation. They were part of the Changing
Did you hear what I
Images
just
of Man
said? I
project.
said one that got away. No, I mean, Saul of Tarsus was a horrible guy.
Some of them do get away, definitely.
Yeah,
some of them do
no, I'm
wake
not disagreeing with you. I totally agree. That's why I brought the Beatles up. I'm saying some of these people get away, and it's never too late, like the whole Faustian thing, for people to realize that they can get out of this. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's like, what's his name? Kanye West woke up recently, and then they locked him up and whatnot. And now he's a Christian, and he's totally woke to what's going on. But, you know, here's the ironic thing, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, Alex. The people who haven't read the Bible, and especially the New Testament, think that they're the most educated about what it says. And rather than thinking that all of us who have read it are stupid, I recommend people drop the ignorance and go out and sit down. It's only 410 pages.
But it's like a decoder ring, though. If you don't understand this stuff.
So is the trivium.
You don't see it. I mean, once you know it, you're like, oh, wow. That's
why they don't want us to read it. That's why they attack the Bible constantly. They do not want us to read it, because once you read it, you see all the stuff going on and you're going to be
because
woke.
These were truly woke people that had been through it, and God isn't going to put us into a free will universe, but he gives us a cheat sheet. We're his children, but he gives us a cheat sheet. He goes, you got free will, but kids, here's a cheat sheet.
Absolutely right. Absolutely correct. And, you know, the Bible is essentially your owner's manual. Everybody got a copy. Read it. Read the thing, and don't pretend that you're smarter than everybody else and we're all just stupid.
And by the way, it's so advanced that if you read a real King James version, and that's not even perfect, you immediately like start going into a trance. Even if you don't believe it, this happens to atheists, everybody. You start like, if you really read it and then are looking for God, you will then see what it's really saying.
I've seen it convert a lot of atheists to truth real fast. Truth is God.
That's right. God is truth. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Infowars.com, newswars.com. Without you spreading the links, we are nothing. You spread the links, we win. And that means the children win. You know, I talked to some family in Vietnam where they ordered them to put the helicopter pilots on LSD and then fly missions over Cambodia. That's just one little snapshot from my life. And then you add this to all the things we're talking about here and how crazy this is. It's amazing. I'm going to very briefly at the start of the next segment tell you the total end game from what the globalists themselves are saying, and then I've reverse engineered it. It's happening. So whatever really is going on, it doesn't matter. The end game is the same. This is like the mystery of the universe type stuff. It's not the final mystery, but this is the heavy. This is why they don't want this show out there. That's why they're not going to attack us for what we said today. They don't touch this. How discrediting is it to talk about Jones says, you know, all these interdimensional things are happening and people see elves? Because this is their religion, bro. You get a bunch of believers together in a real church that are looking for God and justice and what does God want to do us to help humanity. You get incredible power, but it's for humanity. Other people said, no, I want this over other folks. I don't want other people around me to have this discernment too. I want the enlightenment, no one else. Then you're given the knowledge of evil. We already have the knowledge of good, the knowledge of evil, a viral system in the universe of predatory behavior, but it only lowers civilizations into collapse. It doesn't go upwards into that intergalactic waterfall, that light beam into the higher dimensions, into God and the great white throne room. The devil stands at the gate to that, trying to block us. 3 minutes left. Jan Irvin, very impressive. Logosmedia.com. We'll have you back soon. Closing comments.
You know, I really appreciate you, Alex, helping me expose the left-hand path today. That's very important that people grasp what the left and the left-hand path is, that it's Satanism. Again, people need to read their Bible. Don't think that you know what it says because you haven't read it and you think we're all just idiots or, you know, conservative Christian freaks or whatnot. It exposes how the operation works. There's a reason why we all got a copy of it. And, you know, people check out the logosmedia.com website. Check out my YouTube channel while it's still there. I recommend people download everything because who knows, they may shut down my channel after today. If I know that they shut you down, I'll try to get this show up on my channel this week as soon as I get it.
It's funny you say that. Talking about Tim Cook, I got banned off stuff. It's like you talk about Rogan, you're banned everywhere. This is they think this is their weapon.
Absolutely right, Alex. So you know, there's a whole lot more. You know, Alan Watts, Joseph Campbell, Ken Kesey, Aleister Crowley, Carlos Castaneda, all these guys were in on it. Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs, etc. All of these guys were in on MK Ultra. You know, people need to wake up that their psychedelic heroes and the heroes of the 60s were the real central MK Ultra program. The whole Manchurian Candidate thing was a limited hangout, a diversion.
And have you not found, too, at the end of the day, it's all about vampirism, feeding on children's innocence?
Pedivores, exactly right. Adrenochrome, that's what's at the top of this stuff. But, you know, we've been trying to expose this stuff for about 8 years now since I woke up.
Let me ask you this in closing. Why are they fighting so hard? Is this their offensive to overthrow reality, or is their offensive got backed off and this is their counteroffensive?
I think it's their offensive to overthrow reality. I think since I started exposing a lot of this stuff 8 years ago, they ramped it up, trying to, shut this down. They ramped up Rogan and the rest of these people to promote psychedelics as heavily as they could. The Esalen Institute, MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, et cetera. All of that stuff they're all front organizations working for the CIA, in my opinion, as far as
well,
my
that's
research.
on record, but I want to be clear. We're not judging anyone that's had an abortion. We're not judging anyone who's done the human sacrifice like I have. We're not judging anyone that's taken these. We're not saying overall that's bad. I'm not. I'm saying under these people's tutelage and these cults, the last place you want to take an hallucinogen, I say you shouldn't take it, is with some damn cult that says they've got... Go ahead, what?
Do not take them.
Do not take them. Do not take them. All right, Jan Irvin, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. LogosMedia.com.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
CBD-rich hemp oil is totally organic, all natural, something God gave us, and it doesn't have THC in it, and it's totally legal in all 50 states. This is where everybody's going. This is what your body actually needs. There are so many different spectrums of this natural oil that comes from hemp, now legal and lawful in all 50 states, that you need to just go research it for yourself. Now, obviously, there's been a giant marijuana legalization craze that Soros has funded the last 10 years. I've not been involved in that. It's a huge bubble. This is not marijuana. There are hundreds of varieties of hemp. This is industrial hemp that has all the good attributes, but not the bad attributes that turn people into potheads in their basements, picking and eating their boogers. This is the good CBD from the organic hemp oil. And there are so many great products that you simply need to go to InfoWarsStore.com and link over to WashingtonsReserve.com, or simply go to WashingtonsReserve.com yourself to look at all the products, to read about the history, and to see the facts for yourself. So 360 win. There are different CBD rich hemp oil extractions for many, many, many different uses. You owe it to yourself to go look at this for yourself and to also understand it helps fund the InfoWar. People wonder why I haven't gotten into CBD oil. Well, because some of the stuff's got problems, some of it can get you high, and some of it can get you arrested. This is not that. Legal in all 50 states. It's from hemp, not marijuana. It's totally legal. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we can ship to all 50 states right now from the great website, WashingtonsReserve.com.